Last week, in part 1 of Destination Little Did I Know, the Geology Edition, we went for a hike up Dry River Canyon with the guidance of my friend Hal, a geologist at Central Oregon Community College. Today, we're packing up and hitting the road again. This time, we're headed for Hole in the Ground.
Not just a hole in the ground, the hole in the ground.
When you see the famous hole in the ground, at least for me, my mind immediately thinks one thing.
I think you look at that thing and you think, asteroid.
Yeah, I actually just had somebody come up to me the other day and say, that's an impact crater, right? No, it's not actually. It's essentially an underground nuke that was detonated, except by Mother Nature.
That's right. While a hole in the ground looks like a hole in the ground from something that came from outer space, it was actually created by something completely underfoot.
Now, we're not just going to look at hole in the ground. We're actually going to go down into hole in the ground.
It's technically called a MAR, M-A-A-R, MAR volcano. It's a flavor of hydrovolcano, so volcanoes where water's involved. If you want to get nerdy on the volcanology side, it's a low-silica magma, same stuff that produces basalt, which are not supposed to explode like that. They're supposed to like ooze out or maybe give some fire fountaining up in the air. They're not supposed to do a big bang. The exception is when there's water involved.
All right, well, I'm looking all over the place. I ain't seen any water, but if you know where to look, you can actually see signs of ancient water everywhere.
So here's the idea. We've got this constrained between about 13 and 18,000 years ago. That's the end of the last ice age, the last gasp of the Pleistocene. And that whole part of Oregon was lakes, large lakes. I believe it's called Fort Rock Lake, was right next to Hole in the Ground. And that's because the climate was much cooler, so the water didn't evaporate as much, so it was able to build up and create these huge lakes.
Okay, so where you've got lakes, you've got water, right? Sure, but underfoot, there's stuff that'll get your feet wet too.
So you've got a big lake, and right next to a lake, as a geologist would immediately understand, there's water underground. Just because the lake ends on the surface doesn't mean the water ends. The water is still in the rocks.
And since this was a volcanically active period of time in Earth's history where there was water, there was also scorching hot magma.
And the magma heats up the water, and it actually boils it and turns it into steam. You guys see this all the time on your stove. And what happens when you boil water? It expands, turns into steam, and the gas floats away.
Now, imagine taking this 12-ounce can of soda and expanding it to roughly 1,700 times, or around 150 gallons. Well, at some point, something's got to give.
So we do that underground, except all the water there is doing that. That's how you create an explosion. You have a confined space with massive expansion, and it holds it, and then boom. You've got a bomb going off with the energy of an atomic bomb.
And in the case of hole in the ground, it wasn't slow oozing magma that came out. If only that were the case.
Geologists would say it is 10% juvenile ejecta. In other words, 10% was young stuff freshly created, magma. 90% of it was the rock that was already there that was just getting blasted to bits. So mostly old rock that got blown up there.
That old rock went for a mighty long and destructive trip.
That would have shot blocks, like big boulders, up to 3.5 kilometers away at velocities up to 432 miles per hour. I mean, that's just unreal.
Luckily, while the exact time that this hole in the ground became the hole in the ground, they don't think any humans were around at that point.
It would have been an exciting day in Central Oregon to watch that thing go off, and I hope I was at least 4 kilometers away.
And next week, we're heading about 40 miles to the east to check out Crack in the Ground.
Not a crack in the ground, the crack in the ground.
For Central Oregon Daily News, I'm Scott Elmas.